Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Stellium Astrology podcast. I am Stephanie James, your host. I am a tutor at the London School of Astrology. I'm the founder of stelliumastrology.com, and I used to write horoscopes for Elle magazine, and I have been covering rather a lot on the aspects, but I think that the aspects are quite important, and I think this is when you really get into the juicy bit of astrology. So I've been recording a few shows on, each of the aspects and what they are, and I thought I'd go into different aspect patterns. I thought that would be quite a good series of shows to explore. So I have made a few little notes. These are not going to be as in-depth shows. That's me just turning my page in my notebook because I've been sitting here all morning making little notes to help me jog my memory a bit. And I just thought it would be useful to have this in your astrological toolkit, and I can point you into the direction of some useful resources as well as we go through this. But before I get started, I just wanted to remind you guys that up until probably about the 27th I think about up until the 27th of July, I will be I've got my draw on YouTube. Sorry, I looked out the window and just went into a bit of a daydream then. I've completely rearranged where my flat, where I'm living, obviously because we've got a baby on the way, and we've had to change the bedrooms around. So now we have the master bedroom. We were always crammed into this little box room, but now we have the master bedroom, and we've decorated and we're all ready for the arrival of the baby, but it's just weird because it's like I'm sitting in a completely different position. It's like I feel like I finally found like the perfect way to work, and I feel really comfortable and happy and like at peace with my workstation, and I'm not going to be able to do any work for a while. Hopefully that won't be the case actually. Hopefully I'll still be able to continue getting on with some work. I spoke to a really awesome parenting astrologer, a parenting expert, and she's also an attorney, the other day, called Maria Riga. And she told me that when her little boy was born, she used to have him in a little baby sling and she'd be writing at her computer. She's a Gemini, so I can see that. I can see that being me as well, actually. But anyway, I'm digressing. I went off into a bit of a daydream. I wanted to remind you that, if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, then I will put you into a draw. You just have to make sure that your YouTube channel isn't totally private. And if you do have a private YouTube channel, if you could just email me a screenshot, Stephanie, Stefanie, at stelliumastrology.com. You can also, if you want to shout about it on Instagram or Twitter, basically just tag me, and I'll stick you in the prize draw. The odds are still pretty good. You can win a Honeycomb Collective personalised astrological almanac, which is basically your own personal diary with your own personal chart and transits that hit your chart. It's so gorgeous. I got one for my birthday. I think I got it for my birthday, and I'm in love with it. It's just so gorgeous, and you can buy them each year. You can buy them for 6 months or for 12 months at a time, and I'm just in love with mine. It's so amazing. And for anybody who's it doesn't matter how far in the astrology rabbit hole you are, or how much of an advanced practitioner or a total newbie you are, I think having this diary will really help you to connect with yourself, with your own chart, with what's going on in the heavens. So I'm going to get that organised so that one lucky listener, one lucky YouTube subscriber, I should add, will be getting that diary. And the other name I pull out the hat will be winning a reading with me. As mentioned, it may be not an immediate time slot that I can offer for a reading, but that's what's up for grabs. So I just thought I'd let you guys know that. So yeah, you've still got plenty of time to get onto YouTube and press subscribe, hit that bell. And check out some of the episodes that have already come out, because we've already launched over there, guys. It's a relaunch, by the way. I did it during Mercury retrograde, and so I'm relaunching all my episodes and distributing them to another platform, another listening and visual platform. And some videos will be going up there too, some enhanced podcasts, etc. etc. So, without further ado, let's get on with it. So today I'm going to talk about the Grand Cross. Just so you know, I am somebody who does not have a Grand Cross in my chart. I don't have any oppositions in my chart. I've got lots of squares. The only kind of oppositions I experience, really, actually I do have one opposition. It's Chiron opposite my moon. So I do have an opposition, but it's not like I don't know if you could call that like a major, you could call that a major one really, I suppose. But either way, yes, so maybe I do have one opposition. But actually, the oppositions that I probably most experience are things like the MC-IC axis and the AC-DC axis, the ascendant, descendant. But so I thought I would go into the Grand Cross today and just go into a little explanation of what the Grand Cross is. So you've got your horoscope wheel, your zodiac wheel, and what a Grand Cross is having 4 planets that are square to each other. So each of them are 90 degrees apart, basically what happens is they are connected by square, but they are also connected by opposition. So it looks like a big box, like when you go to vote, a big box that you put a big X in the middle, and you can have them really tight. Remember, with crosses, with oppositions and with squares, you can have about 8 degrees all be either side, so they don't have to be super duper tight, but the tighter they are, the more prominent they're going to feel in your life. And the thing about the Grand Cross and anything to do with signs that are kind of square to each other is that they aren't related by element. They're related by their mode or their quality or the quadruplicity. So usually if your planets happen to be sitting in sign, so they actually are very closely related by degree, then they usually be connected by either cardinality, mutability or fixability. So, or fixity, I should say. So you could have a grand, it's referred to as a Grand Cross, but it can be a grand cardinal square, a grand fixed square, or a grand mutable square. And as you can probably imagine, having a grand fixed square, for example, it can present situations. So if all your planets happen to be sitting in the fixed signs, it can be almost a tension that is it's not very mobile, it's very stuck. It's still a very dynamic configuration, and it does require action, but it may display itself through situations in life where you feel quite stuck and unable to kind of make changes. Whereas if you had a grand mutable square, a grand mutable cross, then you may find that there is a difficulty with actually grounding and establishing a sense of stability. There's always a sense of movement. And with the cardinal, because obviously, with mutable, there can be fixity, there can be movement. With the cardinal, there's definitely this kind of starter energy that just, you're always ready to just go and, start over, begin again, that kind of thing. So this is really quite a powerful aspect pattern to have in the chart. It's funny because I remember my friend's daughter, I remember looking at her chart and seeing she had a grand fire. She had a grand cross, and I think I think it was cardinal. And I just remember looking at her and thinking, well, her personality is so, she's very headstrong and really go-getting. She's an adult now. Gosh, makes me feel old. But yeah, at the time she was quite young. In fact, I think she's at university and she's graduating and stuff now. So I'm like, oh my God. But she's quite independent. If you think about the fact that the cardinality does tend to want to, take action. It's like the bullet being fired in the gun, that spark when you're striking a match almost. It's the thing that is that spark of what's the word I'm looking for? My brain doesn't work properly. It's just that spark of action. It's that kind of, instigation, that's what I'm looking for, the instigative quality. And already squares are quite an instigating, challenging aspect, often experienced as either conflict with other people or with yourself, an inner conflict, not necessarily like a direct conflict, but a kind of tension which requires you to face things and move forwards and create solutions sometimes. But also embodied in this Grand Cross is two oppositions. And we know that oppositions are considered to be also a hard aspect. If you haven't listened to the show that I did on the opposition, I would suggest go back, check it out. But yeah, basically the opposition also kind of invites a relationship into this aspect pattern, which actually involves other people. You know, you can almost imagine that this could be, with two oppositions, it could be like you having a bit of a challenge with a few people that really push your buttons and really force you to take a look at yourself sometimes. It doesn't necessarily always mean you're going to have difficulty. It could be really productive. It's, like I said, it's very powerful. The problem is it's an unavoidable challenge. And this is the thing, it's not like it's just that it will happen once in your life. This is like an ongoing, repetitive kind of aspect which will force you to continually take a look at yourself, and also kind of it forces growth. It's funny because when I was studying counselling skills, we did do sessions where we talked about growth. I'm sure I talked about this before. And I realised very quickly that what they were talking about, you can push your client to grow by suggesting that they do homework, for example, or go away and think about things in a different way. And if they're ready for it, then they can take action and work on it. But if they're not ready for it, it can force them to sort of reverse, go back into themselves and be a bit scared and not really want to take action. But actually, what I recognised with growth was it's a very Mars-Jupiter. I mean, I'm sure it could be interpreted in many different ways, but a very Mars-Jupiter kind of a kind of a resonance with those kind of energies, where you do have this Mars, where you do have to push yourself a bit if you intend to grow. And Jupiter is what fills the void that's left behind in that forward motion. So a little bit like if you were digging a hole in the floor, Mars with that shovel, digging, penetrating the ground, and then like maybe you're digging a hole next to a puddle, and the next thing you know, the water from the puddle has moved into that new hole you've dug into the ground. So actually, growth has happened, and what could happen, that ground, that newly dug ground could be very fertile. And so, it's a very, I think, just like a very Mars-Jupiter kind of thing, where you kind of recognise where you can push yourself, and you can, wherever you create a void or wherever you find a new experience which hasn't been something you haven't done in your life before, gives you the opportunity to experience these new and exciting ideas. And I do think that with a Grand Cross, though it's not a Jupiterian aspect as such, the square is a very Mars aspect, as we've discussed in the previous episodes. And having an opposition as well, there is that kind of, there's a Saturnian mastery about, an opposition as well, where you have to kind of learn to cooperate. It's not like the conjunction where it's naturally cooperative, whether or not the planets like to be together or not. The opposition, they don't have to cooperate with each other, so they can be positive in some ways. And if you're not somebody who's got a lot of oppositions in your chart, if you've ever had like a slow transit, a slow opposition that's picking up on your chart in some way. So not long ago I had Uranus opposing my natal Pluto and Saturn conjunction, which is very personal to me because that rules my sun and moon, but it did also happen to square my Mercury and Venus. And at that time I had to deal with a lot of instability, but it was not me who was being unstable, it was the other people who were presenting this unpredictable timetable that they'd constantly be turning up. They'd be there in the middle of the night making lots of noise, almost like you can imagine like nightmare neighbours or something like that, where you have to kind of deal with stuff that is totally almost inflicted upon you by other people. That was my last and most recent experience of the challenge of the opposition by transit. And it's kind of important to recognise that actually when you do have a transiting planet which triggers one of your planets in the Grand Cross, then all of those planets get triggered. So, you know, it's almost like saying you've got a planet at 15 degrees of all of the cardinal signs, or all of the fixed signs, or all of the mutable signs. So you've got a planet at each of those degrees at 15 degrees. So if you had, for example, natally, I don't know, Venus at 15 Taurus, and then Uranus comes along and does his little dance over that degree for about a year and a half to 2 years, that's going to be a period where your whole Grand Cross will be shaken up and forces you into action in some way. And the moon will trigger you on a monthly basis. In fact, you're going to be triggered 4 times a month by the moon with your Grand Cross, because it's going to trigger each of those points. So it's a very dynamic and very action orientated aspect pattern. It's very conscious and aware, and it requires considerable dedication and effort to kind of integrate and balance. I guess this is a very imbalanced kind of aspect pattern. So you have to kind of be, it presents a sense of mastery, as I've said. You do kind of have to master it. And there is a kind of a willingness to kind of overcome obstacles. For me, when I think about the Grand Cross, it's almost like when you watch things like Lost, for example. I don't know if you remember that series, which I still haven't seen the very last few episodes. I just kind of lost interest. Loads of people lost interest, didn't they? But yeah, if you imagine that you get stranded in a kind of like crisis situation, I'd imagine the people with the Grand Cross are the ones who are just going to be the immediate sort of like stepping into a leadership role. Even if they've got, even if it's mutable or fixed, they'll kind of adopt an action perspective, and they'll be like, what needs to be done? I'll do this. And they'll probably really, really good at kind of taking charge. So yeah, I've written down here a sense of heroism and a self-starter, refusal to sit back and take it. Yeah, there really does seem to be a sense with these aspect patterns. Now, I'm not saying that everybody with this aspect pattern is going to be like really defiant and really headstrong and will have all these leadership qualities. However, I'd imagine that it probably helps in a situation where this is like triggered in the individual. So I did have a little look. I have got my little piece of paper with who's got what. And where can we see? Sammy, who I haven't spoken about for ages. Sammy has got a grand... In fact, there's 2 people who've got a very similar Grand Cross. They're both mutable crosses as well, actually. But Sammy's got Jupiter rising in Pisces, so she's got 22 degrees Jupiter rising, and her ascendant is 19 Pisces. And she also has Uranus at 19 Sagittarius, and then she's got her moon at about 13 Virgo, and then Chiron at 18 Gemini. So there's a Grand Cross there. So Uranus and Chiron are opposite each other, which is kind of a generational aspect because they're both quite slow movers. And then she's got Jupiter opposite her moon. So it's quite a wide one, but I think it still counts. And her Jupiter is stationing. Is it stationing retrograde or direct? I'm not sure. But either way, that means that, that adds an extra flavour. But yeah, basically, we've got this Grand Cross configuration. It's mutable. So I think that she'd be good at taking action, but she may be good at coming up with lots of different solutions. This is kind of like an ideas person. I'm getting, somebody who's really good at coming up with alternative solutions, and, she's got a nice balance because she's got all the mutability, which is probably kind of, it can be infuriating if you're somebody who wants to kind of set down some roots at some point. And kind of have that sense of predictability and stability. However, she does have the practicality of the Virgo moon. She's got the Chiron in Gemini. Chiron is a difficult one because it can represent where we have struggles, where we, especially in Gemini, where we struggle to find our voice or don't have confidence in our own ideas, for example. And then she's got this Uranus and Sagittarius, which is a generational aspect, a generational placement for Uranus, but is often extremely open-minded to, other people's ideas, other cultures, spiritual beliefs. And also very, very freedom-loving, and I would say quite a visionary as well. And then Jupiter in Pisces, again, another visionary aspect, of another visionary placement for Jupiter. So really good at bigger picture thinking, very open-minded, very happy to kind of embrace freedom in all its guises, but has that practical aspect as well, that very logical and what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say sensible Virgo, I mean discerning, because she's got two Mercury ruled, this is the other thing, she's got two Mercury ruled signs there with Virgo and Gemini, and she's also got two Jupiter ruled signs, Sagittarius and Pisces, and Jupiter being involved in that, and it being her ruler of her ascendant traditionally and the ruler of her midheaven. This makes this grand cross suddenly feed into career as well, and work. So she's a solutions focused ideas person who's not afraid to take action. That's Sammy. And the other person, I think, was Ashley H, who has the same configuration in the mutable signs, but instead of having Moon in Virgo, she has Sun in Virgo and Mercury in Virgo as well. And Mercury's directly opposite Jupiter. Chiron is opposite, ever so slightly wide, has passed now that opposition to Uranus, and the chart's a bit upside down because Ashley has got Libra rising instead, so her Sun and Mercury are in the 12th house, opposite Jupiter in the 6th, Chiron in the 9th, and Uranus in Sagittarius in the 3rd. So it's kind of almost been flipped around, and this one's not as like self and career focused. This one's a bit more mutable. It's in the cadent houses again, so sort of like the lower energy houses, and this could be a different type of expression, particularly with the Sun Mercury in the 12th house. This is a much more it's almost egoless in its kind of presentation. It still does bring work and routine into the equation, but communication, higher education, travel, local involvement with community is all part of it. So she may feel that she's like, this could be somebody who's involved in a local church group or something, for example, or it could be somebody who wants to do like spiritual moon circles on a monthly basis. But like I said, with this aspect pattern, if you have anything sort of aspecting any of the planets involved in that grand cross, it's going to trigger everything else. It's going to trigger all of the other ones and the oppositions. So it could be that you attract, both of you, Sammy and Ashley, attract people with that Chiron involved, people who need help. You could be rescuer types. And with Sammy, I feel like hers is more dynamic, work focused, because it's in an angular house. It's in angular houses. It definitely feels a little bit more conscious, and she's probably more aware of it. Whereas Ashley, you may be have a lack a sense of self as such when it comes to helping other people who maybe you're drawn to doing some kind of charity work or activism. I don't know why I'm sort of like thinking somebody who does like soup kitchens and helping people who have struggled to help themselves in their life, but to the point that it may be difficult for you to kind of recognise that you sacrifice a bit of yourself when you do these things sometimes. So that was it. I just thought I'd pick out those two charts, just talk a bit about the Grand Cross, and I just thought you guys might find that interesting. Hopefully you did. And that's it for today's show. I am still putting content out on Patreon. I've got a little, what do you call it? A little booklet that I've made with the aspects, with the glyphs and things like that, and a little new moon wish list download that you can basically download and use on a monthly basis if you want to as well, and it's free. You don't have to be a patron to claim that. And yeah, that's it. So okay guys, good luck with the YouTube draw, and I'll speak to you next time. Take care. Bye now.